The ballroom is alight with golden chandeliers, casting soft, flickering light upon the swirling figures below. My breath catches as I see them. Belle, her gown a flowing sea of yellow, and him, the creature I once loved. They twirl together, their movements synchronized in a way that speaks of trust, of affection. My chest tightens. How dare he? How dare they? I've been watching them for weeks now, hiding in the shadows of my own making. It is agony to see him care for her the way he once cared for me, to see that beastly face softened by her gaze. I was his first love, the one who would have stood by him through storms and fire, but that was before his heart betrayed me. I was beautiful once, so beautiful that my presence alone could silence a room. He adored me, his raven-haired enchantress, the woman who dared to love a prince despite the whispers and accusations. They said I had bewitched him, that no man of his stature could truly love a witch without some vile potion involved. His family believed them. I don't understand why they despise witches so much. Is it a crime to be born a witch?
Break it off, or you will lose your crown, your kingdom, your name.
He obeyed.
It's for the best.
He told me, his voice trembling, but his eyes betrayed him. He was a coward, too weak to fight for me. My heart shattered as he walked away, leaving me to the cruel world that had never accepted me. In my grief, I cursed him. I turned his handsome face into the hideous snout of a beast, his strong hands into claws. His castle became a prison, shrouded in mist and shadow, a reflection of the emptiness he had left in me. And the rose. Oh, the rose. A symbol of true love. When its final petal fell, he would remain a beast forever, unless someone could love him as I had once loved him. But I didn't leave the curse without hope. I thought he would return to me, crawling back on those beastly knees, begging for my forgiveness, for my love, to save him. He didn't. For years he hid away in his room, never stepping outside. I wasn't wrong when I called him a coward. As for me, I watched his kingdom crumble under the weight of his curse. His parents died of grief. Their once vibrant kingdom turned to ash. The castle servants, those loyal fools, became nothing more than objects, cursed to suffer alongside their master. I thought it was justice. And then she arrived. Belle. Sweet, naive Belle with her bright eyes and kind heart. She walked into that cursed castle and somehow began to undo the walls I had built around him. He looked at her the way he used to look at me, and it stung more than any blade ever could. I tried to stop it. I sent nightmares to Belle, twisted dreams where he devoured her whole. I transformed the rose garden into a labyrinth of thorns that tore at her delicate skin. I conjured illusions in her mirror, visions of her dying father begging her to return. But nothing worked. She stayed. Desperation drove me to Gaston, the arrogant hunter obsessed with making Belle his wife. She's been taken by the beast, I whispered into his ear. Save her, and she will love you. He was all too eager to believe me, with an army of fools at his side. He stormed the castle. The battle was brutal. I stayed in the shadows, my heart racing as Gaston drove his blade into the beast's chest. He fell collapsing on the cold stone floor. Blood pooled around him as his breaths grew shallow. For a moment I felt triumphant. He would die as the monster I had made him, unloved and alone. But then, something broke within me. He had once been mine. My love. My prince. I couldn't let him die, not like this. I stepped forward and kissed him, hoping to break the curse and save his life. "Come back to me," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "I'll forgive you. I'll save you. We can still have what we lost." He opened his eyes, but they were distant, unfocused.
Belle.
he whispered. My heart froze. Belle appeared, snatching the beast from my arms. She cradled his head in her lap and kissed him, her love pure and unwavering. The final petal of the rose fell, but instead of sealing his fate, it unleashed a golden light. I watched in horror as his monstrous form melted away, revealing the prince I once knew. He was human again, beautiful, whole, and it wasn't because of me. Rage consumed me. I raised my staff, aiming to curse Belle as I had cursed him. If I couldn't have him, neither could she. But as the spell left my lips, she stepped aside, and the curse struck the glass that encasing the rose behind her. The glass shattered. Before I could react, the magic rebounded, wrapping around me like chains. My skin twisted, my reflection morphing into something grotesque. Horns sprouted from my head, my hands became claws, and my face became the face of a monster. They left me there, alone in the ruins of the castle. He didn't look back. She didn't even flinch. Now I sit in this decaying ballroom, watching the dust settle over the remnants of my life. I am the beast now, trapped in the prison of my own making. They have their happy ending, but I am left with nothing but the echoes of a love that once was. And the worst part? I still love him.
It all started with a story. I was sitting in the back of the classroom, my legs stretched out under the desk, smirking as the new teacher, Ms. Evelyn, told us about Pinocchio. She had a haunting way of speaking, her voice soft but piercing, as if it could slice through your lies and expose every hidden truth.
Lies,
she said.
Don't just twist the world around you. They twist you. They reshape you into something you don't recognize.
I rolled my eyes. Cool story, miss, but we're not 5 anymore. The class chuckled, and I basked in the attention. I was Beano, the untouchable. My dad's money kept me safe no matter what I did. That afternoon, Jim became my target again. Skinny, quiet, and always an easy pick. Hey, Jimmy boy, I called, snatching the milk carton from his hands. Before he could react, I dumped it over his head.
Stop, please!
Jim's voice cracked as he wiped milk from his face. But mercy wasn't my style. As he tried to escape, I loaded my slingshot with a small stone. But Jim turned at the last second. For a second, I just stood there, the slingshot slack in my hand. Then the fear kicked in. My heart pounded, but I did what I always did. I walked away. Let someone else find him. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Jim falling replayed in my mind. When I finally drifted off, I woke up to a strange stiffness in my legs. I threw back the covers and gasped. My left leg was straight, rigid, and unnaturally smooth. Running my hand over it, I realized with growing horror, it felt like polished wood. This isn't real, I muttered. Pulling on a pair of jeans, I forced myself to act normal. All the attention that morning was on Jim. Whispers circulated about how he'd been found unconscious, hospitalized with no sign of waking up. My stomach twisted. Surely that couldn't be my fault. Could it? Then the police showed up. They questioned everyone going down the line of students. My stomach churned as they got closer.
Beano?
One officer said, his pen poised.
Where were you after school yesterday?
I swallowed hard. The truth clawed at my throat, but I couldn't admit it. Not when my dad's reputation, my safety, everything was on the line. I went straight home, I lied. Pain shot up to my shoulder as I looked down. My fingers were locking into place, the skin taking on the same unnatural wooden texture as my leg. I clutched my arm, hiding it behind my back. That's all I know. The officer nodded and moved on, but the damage was done. I darted behind the school building, my breath ragged. I checked my hand. It was wooden, my fingers stiff, immobile. A voice behind me made me jump.
Bino, are you all right?
I turned to see Miss Evelyn. Her gaze was sharp, too knowing. She asked if I knew anything about Jim's injury. I shook my head, denying it again. But with every word, I felt my body stiffen further, my chest constricting like it was encased in a wooden cage. Miss Evelyn's eyes bore into me, and she said softly,
Bino, lying won't save you. I can't help if you don't tell the truth.
At home, my dad was waiting, his usual stern expression fixed on me.
Sit down.
He ordered. I obeyed, my legs creaking like ancient floorboards.
What happened at school today?
I hesitated. The room seemed to close in around me. Nothing, Dad. Just a normal day. The wooden transformation surged. My hands froze mid-air. My face stiffened as my nose began to stretch outward. Enough! I blurted, tears spilling. It's my fault. Jim is hurt because of me. I didn't mean to. But my confession did little to soften my father's gaze.
Does anyone else know?
He asked coldly. Miss Evelyn, I admitted. She suspects everything. For a moment, my father said nothing. The silence was unbearable. I dreaded these moments, the calm before the storm. Maybe I had gone too far this time. Maybe I'd finally done something even he couldn't protect me from. I'm sorry, Dad. Tomorrow I'll go to the police. I'll tell them everything. I dropped to my knees, pleading for his forgiveness. I regret what I did, and all the lies. He rose slowly, his movements unnervingly stiff. Under the flickering light, his shadow warped and stretched, revealing something monstrous. My heart froze. His true form emerged, a towering wooden puppet, his face rigid and eerily lifeless.
We don't lie, Bino. We create the truth.
As he spoke, his nose began to extend, the wooden grain cracking as it grew longer. Without a word, he opened a drawer, pulling out a rusty saw. In one swift, he sliced through the wooden length of his nose. Dad? What are you doing?
She'll be handled. You'll learn, just as I did.
As he left, his wooden joints creaking, I sat there, paralyzed. The next day, Miss Evelyn didn't show up. Rumours spread, but no one had answers. I knew, though. Dad had silenced her. More unsettling was the slow realisation that other staff members, teachers, the principal, moved with that same stilted stiffness. They were like me, or worse, like my father. At break time, my friends asked,
Do you know what happened to Miss Evelyn?
I hesitated. My wooden fingers tapped against the table. No idea. I would never escape. A puppet, bound by strings I couldn't see, forever performing the lies I told.
Sarah stepped into the room, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. Her eyes were lined with deep black makeup, and her lips glistened a deep crimson. Tonight, she wasn't just Sarah, she was a vampire. The costume was simple, yet breathtaking. Wow, you look amazing, I said, smiling. I set the knife down as I finished cutting the steaks for dinner, but I accidentally nicked my finger. A small line of blood oozed from the cut. Before I could react, Sarah was suddenly right next to me, her hand softly holding my wrist.
Let me see.
She leaned in, her lips hovering just over the cut. I felt a little strange. Slowly, she brushed her lips against my skin, and then, gently, she licked the blood away. Sarah pulled back, her eyes narrowing. She stared at me for a moment before shaking her head.
Oh, negative?
She muttered under her breath.
You're not my type.
What did you say? Sarah smiled, wiping her mouth.
Don't worry about it. Let's eat.
Her tone was light, but something about the way she said it sent a shiver through me. I let it go, unsure if it was just part of the Halloween act. Later that evening, we headed to my friend Mark's Halloween party. The house was buzzing with energy. People in elaborate costumes, loud music, the smell of alcohol thick in the air. I couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. Maybe it was the way Sarah had been acting, or maybe it was how she immediately gravitated toward the men in the room. She wasn't shy, but tonight, it felt different. She chatted easily with a group of guys, one after another. I watched Sarah as she leaned in close to them, her fingers brushing lightly against their arm, her lips close to their neck as if whispering something. Jealousy gnawed at my insides. She never acted like this around other men. I didn't want to be the possessive boyfriend and ruin the night with my insecurities. But my eyes kept drifting back to Sarah and the boys. Eventually, I slumped into a chair beside her and the man with blonde hair. She barely acknowledged me, her attention completely fixed on the blonde. His laugh grated on my nerves, and I could feel the alcohol muddling my thoughts, dulling my senses. I took another drink, then another, and before I knew it, the world around me blurred. When I woke up, the room was spinning. My head pounded, my mouth dry. I blinked groggily, trying to remember where I was. The party had died down. Most people were gone, the lights dimmed, but something was wrong. Broken glass crunched under my feet as I stood up. A bottle of wine lay shattered on the floor. I stepped closer, but my stomach churned. It wasn't wine. The dark red was thicker, more vivid. Blood. Panic surged through me, and I rushed to the bathroom to steady myself. I nearly vomited when I saw him. The blonde guy crumpled in the corner, his neck twisted at an unnatural angle. 2 deep puncture wounds marred his throat. Blood smeared down his chest. I stumbled back, heart pounding wildly. Sarah. I had to find her. We had to get out of here. I searched the house, weaving through the aftermath of the party, but she was nowhere. My thoughts were racing. What had happened? Who did this? Finally, I spotted her. Through the sliding glass door, I saw Sarah walking arm in arm with someone toward the garden, the moonlight casting their shadows long across the lawn. I stepped outside, following them, my feet moving on instinct. I hid behind the garden wall, my heart racing in my chest. Slowly, I peeked around the corner and froze. Sarah was with a handsome man, but something was wrong. His body was limp, his head lolled to one side. Sarah held him close, her lips pressed against his neck. And then I saw it. She was drinking his blood. I gasped, the sound escaping before I could stop it. Sarah's head snapped up, her mouth dripping with blood, her eyes wild. The blonde man's body slumped to the ground, lifeless, his neck a mess of torn flesh and muscle. Sarah saw me. Then, in a blur of motion, she was upon me. I ran, hard in my throat, but she was too fast. She tackled me to the ground, pinning me down with inhuman strength. I braced myself, sure that this was the end. I could feel her breath on my neck, smell the coppery scent of blood. "Please," I whimpered. "Don't." She paused, her face inches from mine, her fangs glinting in the moonlight. She looked down at my hand, still cut from earlier, dried blood on my skin. Slowly, she smiled.
You don't need to be afraid. I told you before, you're not my type.
She wiped the blood from her mouth and with a slight laugh, added,
I mean your blood. Oh, negative. It's practically undrinkable.
I blinked up at her, too stunned to respond. She stood, offering me her hand as if nothing had happened. I hesitated but took it, allowing her to pull me up. We walked back to the house, her arm looped through mine as if we were just any other couple leaving a party. But inside, my mind was spinning. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or disappointed. Sarah was a real vampire and she dated me because my blood wasn't her type.